Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Ashley. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. The past few weeks, I've been sharing a fall dessert in each of my What's for Dinner videos. And so I'm going to go ahead and just compile them all here. I know Thanksgiving is right around the corner, so if you're looking for something to make for Thanksgiving or take with you to a party or get together, then look no further because all of these were absolutely amazing. Caramel apple cheesecake bars, and oh my gosh, these are absolutely amazing. So I'm going to start out by making the crust. It's a shortbread crust. So I'm going to add in some flour and brown sugar to a large mixing bowl. And then I'm just going to take a fork. You can use a spoon, whatever you'd like. And I just like to go ahead and toss that around to incorporate the sugar into the flour before adding in the butter. And when I add the butter in, you just want to do it in chunks. My chunks were a little bit bigger, so you're going to see me kind of struggle a little bit. I don't have a pastry cutter, so I was just using my fingers. So I just broke those chunks into smaller pieces and then just used my hands to work it into the flour and sugar mixture. You want it just to be like a large crumb. And then once you have that finished, you're going to place that into a greased 9x13 pan and just use your hands to pat that down firmly. And then you're going to place this into a 350-degree oven for about 15 to 18 minutes until it's lightly browned. While that was in the oven, I went ahead and prepared the cheesecake filling. So I'm just going to have a couple of blocks of cream cheese here that are softened. And then to that, I'm adding in some sugar, vanilla extract, and a couple of eggs. And you just want to beat that until it is well combined, and you want to make sure that the cream cheese is smooth. So that's why you want to make sure that you have it softened. And then I'm just going to set that to the side and get started on preparing the apples. So for the apples, you just want to peel them, and then you're going to dice them into a small dice. I just went ahead and cut my sides off of the apple here and ran my knife lengthwise and then turned them and ran it through again. You want it to be smaller pieces to make sure that they cook fully in the oven. This sweet girl loves her apples, and I love the noise it makes when she eats them. So once I diced the apples, I added them to a small bowl, and then you're just going to add in a little bit of sugar and then some cinnamon and nutmeg. And then you just want to toss this well to try to disperse the sugar and the spices to that way they can be evenly coated on the apples. And then again, I'm going to set this to the side so we can do our last step, which is making the streusel topping. And for that, I'm just going to combine some flour, brown sugar, and some oats. Again, using a fork just to distribute that around before adding in my cold butter. And again, I'm just going to use my hands here, but if you have a pastry cutter, absolutely use that. It makes it quicker and easier. But you just want this to, again, be kind of like a large crumb. So now I'm just going to assemble everything. To my par cooked crust, I'm going to add on the cheesecake layer. I'm going to try to get that as even and smooth as possible. And then I'm going to go in with the apples, same thing, just trying to evenly disperse them on top. And then finally going to take the streusel topping and sprinkle that across the top as well. And then this will bake back in the 350-degree oven for about 25 to 30 minutes. Now all ovens are different. Mine took about 35 minutes actually. So you just want to cook it until it is soft set, which means that it's not going to have a wiggly center, to be jiggling around. And then once it comes out, I went ahead and topped it with the caramel drizzle. Then you want to let it cool on the countertop for an hour, and then you're going to place it in the refrigerator to cool for 3 hours before slicing it into the bars. And this was absolutely amazing. I highly recommend this recipe. If you're looking for a new fall dessert, this one is absolutely perfect, so I hope that you give it a try. Now on to our fall dessert. We're going to make these pumpkin twists that are the perfect dessert finger food for game day. So I'm just going to start out by preparing the pumpkin filling part. So you're just going to use some pumpkin puree, and then to that you're going to add in some brown sugar, some pumpkin pie spice, a little bit of maple syrup, and then you're going to give that a good stir. I went ahead and just used my mixer because I thought it would be easiest to combine the brown sugar into the pumpkin. You don't have to do that, but it did make it really quick and easy to do. Then I'm going to take a sheet of crescent rolls, and then I cut that in half lengthwise, And then you just want to press the seams together, and then you're going to top it with that pumpkin filling that we made on one of the sheets, and then you're going to take the other sheet and place it on top before slicing it. Now, I don't know if I did this part exactly correctly or exactly right, but it did work. It was a little bit messy, I have to say, and I got a little bit worried when I started doing this because you can see the crescent rolls kind of started to separate because of that pumpkin filling, but they turned out amazing. So just trust the process. Again, I don't know if there's an easier way to do this, but I just used my pizza cutter to slice down, and then I transferred them to my parchment lined baking sheet, and then you're going to twist it. So you're going to take one end, twist a couple of times, take the other end, twist a couple of times in the opposite direction so it keeps your twist going in the same way, and then you're going to repeat that with all of them. Now, like I said, this process for me was a little bit messy because the filling was starting to come out, but they absolutely turned out perfect. So I highly recommend this recipe. Just be a little patient with this part. It only took maybe 3 minutes to do this, and it was, like I said, messy, but it was definitely worth it. Then I'm going to top each of them with some melted butter, and the recipe calls to combine some regular sugar with cinnamon and sprinkle the top. I did not do the step of combining them. I just sprinkled them separately because I did not want to dirty another bowl. So here I'm going in with that sugar and just topping each one with a little bit, and then I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle some cinnamon as well. Let me know in the comments down below if you've ever tried a twist recipe like this. I'm curious to know if there's an easier or better way to do this. But like I said, even though it was a little bit messy, it was perfect. And I just served it with some whipped cream. Absolutely amazing. All right, so for this week's fall dessert, I am making a marshmallow pumpkin pie. And I saw this recipe on Pinterest, and I knew I wanted to give it a try because there's only a few ingredients in it, and you don't have to bake it. So anything that I don't have to wait to cook in the oven is always good for me. Now, we do have to refrigerate it for a few hours, but still, you don't have to worry about cooking it and over baking or under baking, anything like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and flip you around, show you the ingredients that we need for this recipe, and we'll go ahead and get started. All right, so this is everything that we're gonna need for the pumpkin pie. So for seasonings, we're gonna need some cinnamon and some pumpkin pie spice, a little bit of salt. Then you're gonna need some pumpkin puree. You don't wanna buy the can of the pre-made pumpkin pie filling. You want it to be pumpkin puree. We're gonna need a bag of marshmallows, a pre-made graham cracker crust. You can make it yourself if you'd like to, but I just bought it pre-made, and then a container of Cool Whip. All right, so to my pot, you don't need one this big, but I don't have anything that I think is gonna be the right size. So whatever works best for you, just a medium-sized pot. I'm gonna add in the bag of marshmallows. This is a 10-ounce bag. And then to that, I'm gonna add in 1 cup of pumpkin puree. And then our seasonings. So that's going to be 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, a 1/2 teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice, and a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And then I'm going to turn this on to a low, medium-low heat. And then we're just going to slowly stir everything together, and you're just going to cook this until the marshmallows melt completely and everything combines and is smooth. And then while I'm cooking this, I'm letting my Cool Whip thaw. If you were, I just got the ingredients for today, so if you were planning ahead for this, you would just want to keep the Cool Whip in your refrigerator so that way it can be thawed and ready to go. But I'm just letting mine thaw out on the counter right now while I'm preparing this mixture. And I will show you what it looks like once it is all nice and smooth. All right, so now the marshmallows have melted down completely. Everything is nice and smooth. I'm gonna go ahead and remove this from the pan and put it into a bowl and let it come to room temperature. The recipe says that will take about 30 minutes, which is perfect because that allows my Cool Whip to finish thawing, and then we're gonna combine the two and finish off the pie. All right, so I let the mixture cool to room temperature, and now I'm gonna add in my container of thawed Cool Whip. And then I'm just gonna start folding this in gently. Just trying not to deflate the Cool Whip too much. but you want to mix it well so it's all combined. Okay, so now all we have to do is add this into our pie crust. All right, and then you just want to smooth it out to try to make it even on the top. And then this is going to go into the refrigerator to set for about 8 hours. So this is something that you want to make ahead, but you don't have to bake it, which is nice. And I will show you what it looks like when it is all finished. You guys have to make this pumpkin pie. It is so good. You get that like pumpkin pie flavor, but then it's lighter in texture. I don't know, something with like the marshmallows and the Cool Whip. It is so good. And I actually took some of this with me to work, and one of my coworkers who does not like pumpkin pie and does not like marshmallows loved it. So if you have picky eaters and you want something new to try, I absolutely recommend this recipe. And I love that it doesn't have to go in the oven, especially at Thanksgiving when you have a lot of other things that you have to bake in your oven. This one you don't have to worry about. You can just mix it up and pop it in your fridge.
Now for this week's fall dessert, I'm making some pumpkin blondies. So I'm going to start out by mixing all of my dry ingredients together, which is going to be flour, and then next up pumpkin pie spice, baking soda, and then the recipe calls for salt, but then unsalted butter. I use salted butter, so I left the salt out. I like to just take my whisk and give that a good stir just to thoroughly combine all of the dry ingredients, and then I set that to the side while I creamed my butter, which I did have at room temperature. And I just like to cream it by itself first just to get it going and make sure it's softened. And then to that, I'm going to add in some sugar, and then I'm going to cream the two of those together well. Once that was creamed together, I went ahead and added in 1 egg, and then I'm also going to go in with some vanilla extract. And then I thought I was filming, but I missed putting in the pumpkin. It calls for 1.5 cups of pumpkin puree, so I just used 1 can, like of the smaller cans. And then you just want to thoroughly combine that together. And then we're going to start adding in our dry ingredients, and I just did it half at a time. That way I wouldn't make a mess in my kitchen. So I've been sharing a lot of fall desserts this fall season, so I'm curious what your favorite fall dessert is, so please let me know in the comments down below. I would love to hear. So next up, I'm going to add in some chocolate chips. If you don't want to do chocolate chips, you could do like semi-sweet, you could do white chocolate, you could also do nuts, or you can leave it out entirely and just make like the pumpkin bars. I've never had milk chocolate with the pumpkin before, so I was really curious about the flavor. I loved it. I could definitely see it like not being for everybody, but if you haven't tried it, I definitely recommend giving it a try. And then I'm going to put this into a 13 by 9 inch pan that I did spray with nonstick cooking spray, and this is going to bake in a 350-degree oven for about 35 to 40 minutes, or until a toothpick in the center comes out clean. We absolutely love this dessert. I hope that you give it a try if you haven't tried pumpkin and chocolate together. And last recipe, and certainly not the least, I did a pumpkin coffee cake. So I'm going to start out by making the streusel topping. So I'm just taking some melted butter, and then to that adding flour, brown sugar, regular granulated sugar, and some cinnamon. Now the recipe calls for 6 tablespoons of the brown sugar, so if you don't want to sit there and measure out 6 tablespoons, just use a 1/4 cup plus 2 tablespoons. And then you just want to take a fork or a pastry cutter and then mix all of that together until you get a nice crumb. And then we're going to set this aside while we make the cake. And spoiler alert, this is absolutely amazing. So if you like pumpkin and you're excited for fall, you have to make this recipe. So for the dry ingredients of the cake, I'm just going to go ahead and put some flour together with some pumpkin pie spice. The recipe calls for cinnamon, ground ginger, nutmeg, and cloves, but I just went ahead and did 3 teaspoons of pumpkin pie spice because it has most of those ingredients in it. And then also some baking soda, some baking powder, and a little bit of salt. And then for the wet ingredients, you're just going to combine some vegetable oil, eggs, and then brown sugar, along with a little bit of vanilla, and then 1 can of pumpkin. and then a little bit of sour cream as well. Now the sour cream is going to add a lot of moisture to this coffee cake. I actually took some of this to work with me, and all of my coworkers were saying that it was absolutely delicious and very moist, and that's why. So don't skip out on that sour cream. But you just want to mix this well together until everything is combined, and then you're going to go ahead and add in your dry ingredients. The recipe says to do this with a spoon. I just went ahead and took my whisk and then mixed it until all of the clumps were out and it was smooth. And then I put that into a 13 by 9 inch pan that I went ahead and sprayed with some nonstick spray. And then you just want to top it with your streusel topping. Now, something I love about this recipe, there's quite a bit of that streusel topping, which is my favorite part, but the cake itself is not overly sweet. So it's the perfect balance when you have that streusel topping with the cake. A lot of coffee cakes can sometimes be too sweet, but this is the perfect balance. And then this is going to bake in a 350-degree oven for about 35 to 40 minutes.
I hope that you enjoyed seeing all of these wonderful dessert recipes. If you make any of them, please let me know in the comments down below. I would love to hear about it. I hope that you have a wonderful and happy Thanksgiving with your families. And if you haven't done so already, please make sure that you subscribe before you go, and I will see you in the next video.